ANCAP, Australia's, quote, excuse me, independent voice on vehicle safety, close quotes, with its board of directors comprised mostly of entrenched state government road safety bureaucrats, like so independent, has just blown almost $1 million worth of your tax revenue to curse an irrelevant 4-year-old car by testing it to a safety standard that did not exist when the car was launched back in August of 2020. Dude, money is so easy to spend when you don't have to earn it, isn't it? And this certainly seems to be a fairly pointless exercise to me. Like, I suppose it makes ANCAP look rather good to the minister who approves ANCAP's funding, but does it actually serve the public interest? The car is the i30 sedan, and you have to ask, why did it get 3 stars and not, say, 4? Mainly, this is because it lacks a privacy-invading, driver-stalking camera and other offensive, annoying and useless features which nobody in their right mind would ever demand in a new car. In reality, the i30 sedan is probably about as safe as a Toyota Corolla, which, incongruously enough, basks in a 5-star safety rating from way back in 2018, when a block of Swiss cheese on Valium essentially qualified for 5 stars. Right? We live in a country today where a 3-star car can be as safe as a 5-star car, maybe safer. I'm not exaggerating. Australian consumers, like the median consumer, the buyer of a new car, almost certainly cannot grapple with the inherent complexity of ANCAP's crazy rating system, which couldn't be worse if we gave it to former Soviet bureaucrats to, quote-unquote, fix. Personal opinion. But of course, ANCAP can probably furnish you with 100 reasons why the status quo is not only acceptable, but actually excellent. Welcome, I guess, to the insanely impenetrable world of Australian vehicle safety ratings. I'm John Logan from AutoExpert.com.au. New cars cheap, but Australia only. Website. Card. The Hyundai i30 sedan, codenamed CN7, was launched here in Australia in August of 2020, and it remained unrated for more than 4 years until Thursday, November the 28th, just the other day, when it got clubbed with 3 stars, thanks to ANCAP. ANCAP is not a government organisation. It has no regulatory authority. It is not required to rate every car on sale, or even, as far as I know, rate any car on sale. But it does cop a massive 16.3, I think, million buck backhander from the federal government to essentially copy and paste ratings done by its bigger and slightly less crazy sister in Europe called Euro NCAP. The majority of ANCAP ratings, the current ones, are essentially copied and pasted from Europe. And this is dead easy for anyone to tell. Like, just go to the ANCAP website and look at the crash test photographs, which clearly tell you where the tests took place. The i30 sedan languished unrated for 4 years because it is not sold in Europe, and therefore Euro NCAP didn't test it. And therefore, ANCAP had nothing to copy and paste. It obviously wasn't much of a priority until kind of now, for some reason, and we're going to get into that. The Warrior X4 is Olight's toughest torch in the tactical series, and it features a host of upgrades over its predecessor. Super bright 2600 lumens, easy to find tail switch, drop tested to 2 meters, and IPX8 waterproof. It's a bit big for the pocket, so it comes with this awesome polymer holster, which delivers great security on the belt. It's easy to deploy in the field, and the torch doesn't have to leave the holster to recharge. You could also easily breach a tempered glass car window with the stainless steel strike bezel if you ever needed to rescue a kid or a pet from a hot car, for example, or help a victim of a car crash in the aftermath. Great for search, signalling, or off-roading, or maybe boating. If you need something a bit more EDC friendly for the pocket, try the Olight Arcfeld Ultra, which combines a torch, a laser pointer, and a UV light in a slimline monoblock of proprietary grade aluminium alloy that's actually 1.7 times harder than ordinary aluminium and has 1.7 times more tensile strength than TA2 titanium. The Warrior X4 is 40% off right now, and the Arcfeld Ultra is 35% off until December the 4th during Olight's Black Friday sale. I'll put links to all of this in the description, and you can take another $5 off with discount code JC5 until the 4th. Olight's also going to select 5 lucky Auto Expert customers and give away 1 free swivel to each. The swivel is an awesome workshop LED and torch all wrapped up in the one versatile device. Full sale highlights and discount details in the description. So far this year, the i30 sedan has sold 3,000 regular combustion variants and just over something like 1,700 hybrids. So we could call that 4,700-ish in total, plus almost 900 performance-type N variants. But this safety rating does not apply to the N cars. They remain unrated. And just for comparison, okay, Toyota Corolla with that older cheese-based 5-star rating has sold 21,000 vehicles so far this year. The Mazda CX-5, which is presently unrated because its rating just expired, and which ANCAP seemingly can't be asked to retest, has sold 19,500 vehicles. And to me, this is the opportunity cost of rating the i30 sedan. It's relevancy, right? Cut through. How many people do we help? Why spend $1 million on the taxpayer to tell 21,000 people how safe a Corolla really is when you can just, I don't know, spend the same amount and tell 4,700 people about the i30 sedan? If you wanted to show the minister, once again, what a shit-hot job you were doing, identifying the chaff to idolise, you know, the wheat, as it were, i30 sedan might be an excellent political choice. So to me, this looks kind of like a conflict of interest. It wouldn't matter if ANCAP was privately funded or if Hyundai just paid for the testing. They didn't, I inquired, but it does matter if the taxpayer is footing the bill. ANCAP bought 7, I think it was, i30 sedans, probably paid nearly retail for it, and they had to hire Crash Lab for several days. All with your money. The Hyundai i30 is a popular choice within the small car segment, and the addition of the hybrid powertrain this year broadens consumer interest. This underscores the importance of having an independent safety rating available for this model, so consumers and fleets can make informed decisions about safety and determine which model is right for them. That's volleyball referee, international volleyball referee and former finance industry lawyer, now ANCAP CEO, Carla Horweg. There's quite a lot to unpack there. First up, and most easily, small car is not a proper fucking noun. I do hope the taxpayer didn't pay for the proofreading on the press release also. The i30 sedan is not a popular car here in the context of the cars Australians actually buy. It's just not. The small car segment, like, who cares? It is slowly dying. There is no longer a small car in the top 10 most popular cars list. Like, get over it. They're becoming increasingly irrelevant. As for this claim about the hybrid variant, quote, broadening its appeal, 144,000 hybrids have been sold so far in 2024, and about 1,700 of those have been i30 sedan hybrids. So what's that roughly? About 1% of total hybrids. Please. Smaller vehicles are inherently more vulnerable due to their size, so it's particularly important for manufacturers to prioritise safety to protect occupants and other road users. Volleyball Carla there again, and Isaac Newton agrees. Dude. But i30 sedan is 4.7 frickin' metres long, and it weighs 1.4 tonnes. So it's actually longer than a Tucson and only about 250 kilos lighter, depending on the spec. In other words, it's hardly a Kia fucking Picanto, is it? Hashtag perspective. Plus, if any car hits something unyielding, such as, I don't know, Ayers Rock or a dirty big tree at the side of the road, Isaac Newton says that a small car is not more vulnerable at all. It's not that simple. This claimed added vulnerability of small cars hinges entirely on what they hit. That is only a true statement about them being more vulnerable if they hit something that yields, especially a bigger vehicle. This is very basic physics, which I'm pretty sure is not covered ever at law school, and I would argue that a significant number of high mechanism crashes in Australia, especially in regional areas, involve single vehicles just spearing off into the boonies like they go visit the scenery and then they hit a dirty, big, unyielding fuck-off tree. If it's really that vital to rate the i30 sedan, and I don't see that it is, especially on the taxpayer, why not do so way back when it was launched in August of 2020? Why wait? All of those people have bought one in the meantime, completely ignorant of how safe it was. Introduction of the hybrid variant, right? It's fairly irrelevant and sounds pretty contrived to me as an excuse for doing this now. There has to be another reason. Spending almost $1 million to demonstrate to fewer than 1% of total hybrid buyers that if you test a 4-year-old car to stringent new protocols that didn't even exist back then, perhaps because you just couldn't be asked doing it in a timely fashion, you get a shit result. That's just a bad way to invest public funds. The hybrid and the combustion one crash exactly the same in any case. I've read the entire public 10-page ANCAP report on its findings for this car, and I can tell you that ANCAP says its rating and the granular detail on the pages apply to both the combustion-only and hybrid variants equally. I'd argue that ANCAP has a moral obligation to spend these funds where they will do the most good. Otherwise, I suppose they'll be answering to Voltaire, you know, in the afterlife. ANCAP's rating system is very poor, in my opinion. The overall rating is not only incompatible with other ANCAP ratings over the recent time domain, you know, making a 5-star Corolla from 2018 back in the cheese years maybe less safe than a 3-star i30 sedan tested this year. That's not like totally mind-blowing confusing for median people, is it? It's also no guarantee that a 4-star car crashes better than a 3-star car. See, ANCAP establishes 4 ratings per car, and the lowest of those determines the overall star rating. Are you bleeding from the ears yet? The 4 ratings are adult occupant protection, child occupant protection, vulnerable road user protection, and safety assist technology. To get 5 stars, for example, you need a minimum score of 80% in the first 2 categories and 70% in the last 2. That's right, dude. They can't even standardise the frickin' thresholds in their own silos. The i30 sedan crashes, meaning it protects adults and children inside the car, to a current 4-star standard. This is a fact, okay? It protects vulnerable road users to a 4-star standard as well. This is also a fact, but it's just 4% shy of the minimum standard to qualify for 4 stars on safety assist technology. So the overall rating for that car is 3 stars. It's insane. They actually expect ordinary people to come to grips with this when they're deciding which car to buy. One huge problem with this is that this safety assist technology is largely bullshit. And I'm saying that as an engineer. Much of it is abject bullshit, as in A, it's badly implemented, and B, there is no evidence that it reduces road death or trauma. Like, I challenge ANCAP to get a dozen human factors PhD types in a room and discuss the implementation and effectiveness of these bullshit systems. I would pay to attend that one. Meanwhile, I guess, over in America, where they have both First and Second Amendments to the Constitution, huge fan of both, they also have an institution called the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. Unlike ANCAP, which always kind of has its financial dick dragging in the dirt, needing taxpayer funding just to remain afloat, the IIHS is funded by insurance companies in America, and it has actual experts and big buck controlled mayhem laboratories, and they are awash in actual real world crash data. They know the circumstances, the vehicles, and who lives and who dies, because that's the data insurers collect. And there is vastly more crash data to be harvested in America than there is here, owing to the population and its affluence and overall size, right? The IIHS is definitively evidence-based. They do different crash tests, real-world ones, more relevant ones in my view, not ridiculously expensive, irrelevant ANCAP ones. And here, I'm looking at you, MPDB test. Like, Jesus. And they rate the whole market of vehicles every year in a consistent way, which is dead easy for consumers to digest. So you can easily compare a Corolla with an i30 sedan in America, even though it's called the Elantra over there, right? You can do that dead easy, and you don't need an engineering PhD to get it right, which is the main point of these agencies, is simplifying the gross complexity of this very, very complex topic and making it digestible and relevant. And guess what, dude? The IIHS gives the i30 sedan, the Elantra, a top safety pick rating, which is one increment below their top rating, which is top safety pick plus. The IIHS says that Elantra is safe. ANCAP says it's not. They can't both be right. To me, ANCAP rating the i30 sedan 4 years late just reeks of being a political stunt. And they've done this before on, for example, the Mitsubishi Express and the Hyundai Palisade and others. In other words, they spent a lot of money they didn't earn from the public to further an agenda that seems to me primarily unrelated to their core mission of informing the public. This is just my opinion, okay? I'm not holding this opinion in isolation, however. Albors over at the Lesser Experts, he wrote an excellent piece on this earlier this week. And there was a time, I'll admit it, about a decade ago now, maybe a bit longer, when I was Albor's editor, and neither he nor I thought that I would ever use the words excellent and Albor's in the same sentence. But hey, here we are. Well done, dude. Hashtag respect. That was an awesome story. So, lesser expert Alborz described late-breaking ANCAP's attention to the i30 sedan as a, quote, publicity stunt, and I think he's bang on the money with that. It's a good report. I'm going to link to it and a few other resources in the description if you are interested. To me, right, this year, watching ANCAP and Hyundai Shitsville try to play nicely together in the safety sandpit has been most uplifting indeed. See, back in February, the top Shitsvillian in Hyundai Shitsville's corporate hierarchy, John Ketty, did an interview with a dude you've probably never heard of, but who is actually a really good motoring journalist named Bruce Newton over at Car Sales, in which Ketty said, Kona is certainly a 4-star car, and that's totally accepted, but a 4-star 2023 protocol is significantly safer than 2020 to 2022 5-star. Ketty said this just after ANCAP gave Kona 4 stars back in February. IIHS says that Kona is a top safety pick plus, by the way. When you talk about it openly, it's as though you want to hurt someone. So you just don't talk about it. We can't have a mature conversation. Surely someone can say it's a 4-star because the protocols in 2023 are so tough. But I tell you what, the 4-star protocol is good enough to buy because if you are buying a 2020 protocol 5-star, you can be assured this newer car is better. To ANCAP, I'm imagining that Ketty jamming these comments down the throat of the public via Bruce, where, heaven forbid, the minister might read them. It's roughly the same as walking into a room to sort things out once and for all, kind of carrying a jerry can and a Zippo, right? For some reason, okay, presumably to appear balanced or perhaps because his phone just rang kind of immediately, Bruce saw fit to oxygenate the responsive volleyball Carla without delay. Several of Hyundai's recent models have fallen just shy of 5-star requirements, which is disappointing for consumers and fleet buyers. Competitor brands continue to strive for, and in the vast majority of cases, meet 5-star requirements, whether they are fleet-focused models or not. We'd encourage Hyundai to implement updates to the Kona with its next midlife update. For starters, okay, I don't see how that is in any way a valid summary of that company's performance on safety at that time. Looking just at new models, like current models, every Hyundai ANCAP has tested since 2020 until February of 2024 when she made that claim is currently rated at 5 stars, and they would be like the Ioniq 6, the Palisade, the Staria Load, the Ioniq 5, the Staria serial killer people mover kind of thing, and there's one more, the Tucson. Only the 2020 to 2022 Palisade, which ANCAP didn't test until 2 years after it launched, and which they tested only a few weeks before it was facelifted and upgraded to a 5-star standard, was given a 4-star rating. So another monumental waste of time, effort, and resources there. Quote, several of Hyundai's recent models have fallen just shy of 5-star requirements. I don't see how that can be a true reflection of the facts at the time she said it. Only one model tested in the 2020s up until February this year had historically scored less than 5 stars. That would be the Palisade, and it was facelifted only a few weeks later and was immediately back to 5. And she was making these comments in the context of the Kona getting 4 stars in February. So if that's several, then okay. But Dictionary actually says several means more than two, but not many. So there's that. Anyway, to me, this exchange facilitated by Bruce suggests quite strongly that a mature conversation, it's not funny, was actually not, and I suspect is still emphatically not, taking place in the Hyundai ANCAP safety sandpit. If it were, presumably, we wouldn't be reading about it, would we? Still, corporate tantrums are quite entertaining. At least I find them entertaining. Expertly iced in such extreme politeness. But you can just tell, can't you, that the underlying cake is a kind of delicate sponge made almost entirely of fuck yous. That's how it seems to me. It could be completely different. Then, a few months after that, the former second most hated motoring journalist in all of Shitsville, Joshua Dowling, wrote this piece here in EFTM, in which he alleged that there had been, quote-unquote, secret lobbying of the media by car makers in which a quid pro quo of advertising gold would be leveraged against outlets who jammed a barbed wire enema into ANCAP or went easy on cars that earned low star ratings kind of thing. That was the gist of it, is what I mean. Josh didn't put it quite that way because he's a professional. And he didn't name any names, sadly, which is why he was only ever the second most hated. Always the bridesmaid. So frustrating. And hey, don't worry, dude. I know I just kind of made it sound there like Josh was dead, like that was his eulogy, but Josh is not dead. Mostly. He just moved over to be Croaky's PR guy, so he's not the second most hated anymore. That's just like a historical badge that he always wear, I suppose. Like he's the PR for Ram and Renault and brands of that nature, which is, now that I think about it, it's not dissimilar to death, but I knew him back when he was still allowed to be a bastard kind of thing. Imagine that. Croaky's PR cheese. Going to bed a Jedi one night, on Tatooine perhaps, and then waking up the next morning in a corner office at the frickin' Death Star with an email telling you that your application to be, I don't know, policy and advocacy director for the Galactic Empire was successful and, dude, the Emperor will see you now. Anyway, Josh's story here was almost certainly wrong in as much as I don't see the whole church and state apparatus as quite that corrupt, meaning journalism and its interface with the car industry. It's pretty corrupt, but it's not that corrupt. It's more likely today that a major media outlet would just extort advertising from a car maker under the threat of covering their vehicles less or less favourably if they didn't comply, or covering them more if they do, kind of thing. They might not even just have to say it, just look at each other in a particular way, you know. I can, however, see several car makers, in the vernacular of Ketty's beef, remember that, failing to have a mature conversation with ANCAP about safety and lobbying their mates afterwards in the media with their point of view on this and that. That shit happens all the time. It's actually called PR, you know, being lobbied by this vested interest or the other one, and your job is to slash bullshit and mine down to the truth kind of thing. At least in an ideal world, that would be kind of how it works. I just don't see, however, a brown paper bag under the table for going easy on unsafe cars. I see car makers explaining how they're kind of fed up and they think ANCAP is doing a bit of a shit job, in their opinion. So, on Thursday, after spending almost $1 million in taxpayers' money over the past several months, ANCAP takes off in its taxpayer-funded B-52 and it drops the 3-star thermobaric bomb on the fairly irrelevant Hyundai i30 sedan. And I have no proof whatsoever that ANCAP went looking for a political fuck you to jam into Hyundai's rectum for Christmas. Merry Christmas, Hyundai. No proof. in lieu of, the mature conversation that Ketty said is, kind of impossible anyway. I'm not implying that they did this. There's no evidence for it. I'm merely saying that all possible sets of circumstances warrant consideration, don't they? Like mature conversation gate, the bridesmaid secret lobbying exclusive in EFTM, and the seemingly random decision suddenly to take an interest in a fairly irrelevant 4-year-old car. They seem to fit on a timeline, and they might be more than just serendipitously hilarious, mightn't they? Occam's razor does absolutely say that the simplest answers are often right, usually right, whatever, in the absence of compelling evidence to the contrary, but that's certainly not proof that this latest fuck you is sort of redneck Wonderland style feud, the latest volley in this entrenched cone of silence, let's call it. No such allegation is made, dude. So here we are, I suppose. It's easy for me to see ANCAP being quite cranky with Ketty, still. They do think they're very important, seemingly. I think that's how they view themselves, as kind of vital in the framework, nudging car makers around, saving lives. Easy to see Ketty getting somewhat irritated by that 36 grit enema of narrative seemingly implying anything less than a 5-star rating is coffin on wheels, of which they should be ashamed, perhaps. But putting these tinfoil hat conspiracy hypotheses to bed briefly, it's hard for me to see a world in which testing the i30 sedan 4 years late is the best possible use of public funds, solely in the domain of opportunity cost, when they could have retested the far more popular Corolla or CX-5 FFS. They're both gagging to be done, aren't they, in new and exciting ways, so to speak. Perhaps Ketty and Volleyball Carla should sit down and have one last crack at mature conversation with an open mind, on a table perhaps made entirely of olive branches, on a concrete floor perhaps reinforced entirely with buried hatchets, in a broom closet in the United Nations. Dude, as someone with 5 ex-wives, I know quite a bit about applying ethylene glycol in frosty conversational situations. So I strongly suggest that they start with a couple of easy points, which we might all just, reasonably agree on, such as, I don't know, A, ANCAP's rating system is a bit too fucking complex and crap for ordinary mortals to understand, and B, the Kona and i30 sedan actually protect their occupants pretty damn well, at least according to the IIHS's far more credible real-world crash data, in-house testing, and digestible reporting system. And I suppose then we'll just see where the conversation takes itself after that. Like, dude, what could possibly go wrong? Worst case scenario, couple more stories for Bruce. In closing, to Ketty's beef and Ms. Volleyball, I would make one simple, sincere request. If you do attempt this ceasefire and undertake these negotiations and have one final crack at diplomacy, may I please, pretty please, with sugar frosting on top, come along and spectate